Yeah.
Hey, Eric, what's going on?
Not much. Just
Cool.
loving that Skype song.
Yeah, that's I think that's the benefit of sticking with Skype right now is we get to hear that cool song.
Not only does it work, but also the cool song.
Maybe that's the universe telling us stick with Skype.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
You just never know. Oh, how's the new year been treating you so far?
Oh, all right. Yeah, just went back to work today, so good, but uh, a little taxing
Oh
to
yeah.
go from 2 weeks with pretty much nothing to do to getting up at 6 o'clock again and
Yep.
you know
It's like now,
doing the damn thing, as they say.
yeah. Now you got everything to do.
Yeah, for sure. How
Yeah.
about you?
Oh, this past week has been. I'm trying to get back to that point, but the weather's been so terrible. At
Yeah.
least on our country. I mean, we live on a gravel road, and so
Hmm.
like good luck trying to get anybody to clear our road. And so
Right.
even though we didn't have, when was that winter storm? It was like Saturday or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had a lot of snow. Shoot. Yeah, it must have been last week. And then we
Yeah.
had a few more inches,
Yep.
a few days after that. So,
Yeah. And even though it was that long ago, our roads are still
yeah.
slick and messed up, and
Oh, yeah.
also there's been like I don't know about in Iowa City, but it's been really foggy, and
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
so I've just been like if I wasn't doing a delivery job that I'm able to make my own hours at, like I would definitely be working right now. But since I'm able to make that call, I haven't
Right.
been on the road delivering yet in the new year. I figure
Yeah.
we have the entire year for people to order food from me. Uh,
Right.
so I'm not sweating it too much. Although I do want to get back into kind of a routine.
Hmm.
It's always nice to do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
But
Yeah. Cool.
yeah, 2021. It you know here we are. We've survived the worst year in our lives so far. Um,
Hopefully, it's the worst.
hopefully it's the worst. Hopefully it's the worst. That's what I'm hoping for sure.
Yeah.
So this is the first episode of 2021, and we're going back in time, uh, even further than 2020 with this one,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it's our favorite releases that we heard the first time in 2020,
Hmm.
but they were released before 2020.
Hmm.
And I think I already kind of mentioned this. I think I texted you earlier, but I had three releases that I
Hmm.
that you saw in our file that we've been sharing,
Right.
and I've changed all three of them. And,
Oh,
but I
okay.
but I have a reason. I have a reason, and this was a
Okay.
very last minute spontaneous decision. Um, and this is the criteria that I decided to go by. My personal
Okay.
criteria. You may see it differently, but um, okay. So originally, I'll just say them right now. Originally, I had Jawbreaker's first album, Unfun. I had the
Hmm.
Dead Milkmen, Beelzebubba, and I
Hmm.
had Latyrix, the album. Now,
Yeah.
with the exception of Latyrix, the album, which I'm just gonna go ahead and spoil it right now because what the hell. That is actually one of my three honorable mentions now. Um,
Okay.
with the exception of that one, I realized that Dead Milkmen and Jawbreaker were both bands that I've already listened to in the past, just not those albums. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, I kind of think that it might be a better criteria to go by, that these are bands that I heard for the first time, or artists that I heard for the first time. Because I've already, I mean, I've been listening to Jawbreaker for about 10 years. I just never heard that album.
Oh, I see.
I still,
and
same with,
that makes sense.
Same with Dead Milkmen. I'm not very familiar. I wasn't familiar with anything other than Punk Rock Girl from the Dead Milkmen, but I've heard the Dead Milkmen. My sister used to be a huge fan. I remember their first album, Big Lizard in My Backyard. She was listening to that cassette all the time when I was growing up.
Yeah, right.
Well, and so I was like, well, I think it would just make more sense. I still consider those albums honorable mentions for having discovered them, but I went ahead and decided to replace the my 3 releases with releases from groups that I had never heard before. And then I decided that Eriks, which I'll explain a little bit more in the honorable mentions about that one. So yeah, I'm totally spoiling some of this from the get-go.
Okay.
But that one I decided that I liked another release more than, or 3 releases a little bit more than that one. Anyway, so now that I've kind of let the cat out of the bag about some of my stuff, you still don't know what my 3 favorite releases
I still don't
are.
know what they are.
So yes. So this is actually going to be kind of fun for you, I think. And I apologize for changing at the last minute, but I should have updated the list.
I will say that I can talk about Beelzebub for hours,
dude.
So
that record, here's the thing, like everybody who, well, not everybody, but in your age range anyway, which I mean, I'm talking like you're not really that much older than I am. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I get less older than you.
Exactly, year by year. But nonetheless, a lot changes in a couple of years, you know? And so the Dead Milkmen were not part of like the culture, if you will, in terms of alternative music by the time I was in high school, you know?
I see.
And so
that makes sense.
And so I was aware of Punk Rock Girl, you know, and a couple of other songs. Like I did know Bitch and Camaro. But when I decided to go ahead and give a listen to that one, and I actually listened to their first 4 albums. Big Lizard, I can't remember what the second one is, and then Becky Fellini.
Becky Fellini.
Yeah, Becky Fellini. Yep, I think that's their third one. I don't remember. Oh, their second one's Eat Your Paisley.
Right. Yeah.
Which is,
I don't know those other ones as well.
That
was my jam,
dude. So. I would hands down say it's their best album out of listening to every single one. But it was like something again that was. It's like that Jawbreaker album that I mentioned. It's something that I'm really surprised that I never got into when I was like 16 years old.
Yeah, I've never listened to Jawbreaker at all, and I know that everyone that I know really likes them. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
And the Unfun I'd never listened to, and it was good. It felt kind of like pop punk. So it was kind of Cure-ish at points.
Yes. I think sorry. Go on.
The next one though, after Unfun, I listened to that one as well.
Oh, Biovac or some weird name like that.
Oh, well, I don't know. It was just the next one on Spotify, so it probably.
Oh, okay. They put out 4 albums in their career. Unfun, Biovac, I think was the second. 24 Hour Revenge Therapy. and Dear You. Those are the four.
I think it was Dear You.
Okay, Dear You. That's the one record I was familiar with.
It's really good. I wish I would have listened to it.
It's incredible. It's
1990 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, actually, that record came out in '95, and like there's a if you're, I don't know how much of a sucker you are for music documentaries, but I totally am.
Yeah.
And there's a documentary called Don't Break Down, and I'm not going to get into the whole fascinating story, but just to kind of, I'll try and do like a really condensed version real quick. Basically, Jawbreaker, it's kind of like that whole like punk rock thing. They it's the classic punk rock story. They put out 2 records that were embraced by the underground. Then their third record was still like a raw production, but the songs got catchier. They started to get major label interest. They told everybody, don't worry about it. We're not going to sign to a major label. Next thing you know, they signed to a major label and they're opening up for Nirvana. Everybody hates them. And people were coming to their shows. They were actually paying for the tickets just to put their backs to the audience while they played the new material on the major label debut album. Major label debut album, which is Dear You, comes out. It gets... They end up actually signing to the same label as Green Day. They end up signing on to Green Day's management. They follow the coattails of Green Day because Green Day just got successful with Dookie.
Right.
On top of that, they had opened up for Nirvana a year prior, right before Cobain killed himself. And then, so everybody hated them because, Dear You sounded too commercial. And then, so it sells shitty on the major label. So the label drops them. They break up because of it. And then, kind of like Pinkerton by Weezer, a few years later, that record then kind of picked up a cult following and is now heralded as a masterpiece.
I really liked it a lot. Like, I wish I would have been into it before. Like when it was current. Yeah, I just liked everything about it. It was like kind of like Teenage Fan Club.
Yeah, it definitely had
a little darker.
Yes.
And the singer, and I know that he now has a different voice, but on this he sounds almost just like Richard Butler, who sings for the Psychedelic Furs and Love Spit Love.
Okay,
almost the exact same voice,
which
is awesome because that's one of my favorite voices ever in pop. I guess you could call it pop music.
Sure.
Yeah. So I really liked that. So I'm glad you put those on there, even if you're not going to talk about them now. So
sorry to disappoint you there.
No, not at all. Did we do our introductions or have we started?
Oh, it's recording right now. I figured at this point, we'll just go with it. I mean,
okay.
I think people, if the people who are actually listening to this podcast at the moment, they probably figured out that our names are Dan and Eric.
Yeah, probably.
And at this point, I think they could probably figure out whose voice is which. And if not, then it'll be fun. It'll be a fun little game that they could play.
Yeah. Well, then, if we're actually on it, do you want to tell me your first secret?
Well, actually, I was kind of hoping. Well, who went first last time? Was it me who went first, or was it you?
Yeah, it was you.
Should we reverse it and have you go first this time, or do you want to keep the same energy?
I'll go first.
All right.
I think I'm gonna try to be a little more succinct this time.
Okay.
The last episode I thought went well, but it went pretty long.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I'm all down for trying to make this one less longer if possible.
Right, if possible.
If possible.
So I guess I have 3 things that I chose, and then I have 3 things that are honorable mentions. And just like last time, they're almost interchangeable. I basically just couldn't decide.
Sure.
So
sure.
Yeah, but stuff that I got into in 2020, my criteria was, well, it's funny. Like a lot of times, if I haven't discovered something, it's because I think I know what the band is,
right.
or I hold something against them that's stupid.
Right.
So, like we talked about Galaxy 500 last time.
Yes.
I never listened to them because I thought they were like a cock rock band.
Yes.
Or like the Super Suckers or something, which, whatever, that music's fine. It is what it is, but it's not something I really seek out. Like, I'm okay listening to the Caius that I've heard and calling it a day, pretty much.
Right.
So, anyway, and so the first thing that I'm going to talk about, the first record, falls into that squarely and completely. So the group is Silver Apples.
Yes.
And I think it's basically, two guys. So the reason I never listened to Silver Apples is because there's an album by Morton Subotnick. And Morton Subotnick is as far as like the almost unlistenable experimental electronic music from the 60s that I'm pretty into. Like, I have a pretty nice collection of those things. Most of them aren't even presented as music. They're seriously like recordings made at the Boston Music Conservatory Electronic Music Studio. That'll be the title. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like a science record. It's not about music. Anyway, Wendy Carlos, Morton Subotnick, some other people started to kind of change that and turn it into something that resembled music, or at least use musical ideas. Anyway, he has an album called Silver Apples on the Moon, which is honestly probably in the top 5 most well-known and popular experimental electronic music albums. So I didn't like that they were called Silver Apples, because to me it was just like, why would you just steal someone else's title? You know what I mean? I just thought it was...
Did they get the band name from that album?
I don't know how they wouldn't have, but you know how it is. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because that record, I'm pretty sure, predates their first release.
Most likely.
I guess I should have found that out. But, so for years I didn't listen to them because I found that to be irritating and frustrating, that they would basically steal their band name from one of my favorite records.
Yeah.
So finally, though, I read enough about it, heard enough about it from other people. Everyone was like, oh man, you gotta listen to Silver Apples. Why don't you listen to Silver Apples? It's like exactly the kind of stuff you like. And I would just be like, because it's a big ripoff or whatever. But I finally did listen to it, and it's amazing. Like, I can't even talk about how outrageously forward-thinking the self-titled Silver Apples album is. Like, if I heard it now and someone said, that's a new album, I would say, wow, that's really cool. You know, I wouldn't for 1 minute think that it came out in 1968. Not for a second. And it predates krautrock. It predates all the things that I would think that they were taking from now if I heard this. So I would think they were, taking things from Can and Cluster and just things like that, the krautrock stuff, even Kraftwerk to an extent, with the sort of motoric, steady drums and things. But it also sounds like no wave. It sounds like post-punk. It sounds like goth somehow at points. It's crazy. And the level of synth work on it and the organs used, the songwriting, it's totally insane. And I personally feel like there are bands now that Silver Apples were a huge influence on, like beyond an influence, basically a blueprint. But they're newer things. Well, like Stereolab, that's pretty old, but they sound just like Silver Apples.
Yes.
Broadcast.
Yep.
The Blow. All this stuff, even elements of Black Moth Super Rainbow and things are just almost directly lifted from Silver Apples. And it's amazing that this happened before any of that. Then the second record, Contact, was also mind-blowing as well for all the same reasons. So that's my first pick about the stuff that I discovered in 2020. The songs that I liked a lot were Dancing Gods on the self-titled one, which might be sort of problematic. I think they purposefully use Native American drums on that. And it's kind of like some new agey subject matter and, stuff like that, which in 2021 is a different thing than it was in 1968, I think. But still, whatever. I'm just saying I understand that there's problems with that song. Anyway, and then the song on the second record, Contact, there's a song called A Pox on You.
Yeah.
And I can't get over it. I've listened to it 100 times in the past 2 months, probably, and I just can't. I can't even understand what I'm hearing and how it took me personally my entire life to hear it. So, yeah, that's it. Silver Apples.
Yeah, I listened to them immediately. It was the first group that I listened to out of your list. And I had heard of the Silver Apples before, but I didn't know what they were. And yeah, I didn't listen to them for a different reason than you did, and that's just because the descriptions that I kept hearing, I tend to not be as into krautrock as a lot of my friends. I mean, I do think that there's elements of it that is very, like, Can does some really interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. I do like Stereolab, and in fact, my suspicion is that I heard the name Silver Apples probably mentioned in a review of, like, I don't know,
right.
Loops and Dots or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I saying that album right, by Stereolab?
I think so.
Yeah, but anyway, when I listened to it, the thing that I really liked about it, and this is going to sound kind of insane, but it just totally transformed me to, like, almost like another dimension. I was like, this is insane. It's 1969 or something when this record came out, or 67, or did you say?
The first one was 68, yeah.
Okay, 68. So, and it was just the only other, like, artist that I can think of that was doing something similar but in a much different way. Like, I heard a little bit of, like, Bruce Hack going on in there.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
And definitely I can hear where the comparisons to something like Can would definitely come from. But the way, the feeling of the record, the voice, the sounds, and then the weirdest part to me was on the second record, like the last song, I think it was a banjo song.
Yeah.
Just like out of the blue.
It's really weird.
It was so strange. It was just like, what in the world? But that opening track, Oscillations, I can't get that. I can't get that out of my head. And then, pardon me for forgetting the name, but the third track, the third song on the first album, the beat to that one,
in front of me. So.
The beat to that one, just the movement is just, it's almost like hypnotizing. I mean, you've made me a Silver Apples fan, like straight up. Like I'm probably going to be listening to that record for quite some time. And I don't really buy a lot of physical, media anymore. Mm-hmm. But that's actually one album that if I happened to come across it, and it was the right price on the right day, I would probably purchase. I would snatch it up on any format. You know, if it was on cassette, CD, or vinyl.
Yeah,
like it's that good. It's that good.
It's crazy good.
It is,
and it's again, like I said before on the last episode. There's this level of appreciation for me that is unmatched, and that level is always like actual true frustration and anger with the people in my life for not telling me about something sooner.
Right.
This one doesn't fall into that. Like literally everyone ever in my life, basically, who's ever heard this is like, why don't you listen to Silver Apples? You know? And it was just me being obstinate. It was just me being like,
oh yeah.
And I just looked it up, and Silver Apples of the Moon came out in '67.
Wow.
So like, who knows? Like he might have heard them and called his record that. I don't know. You know? But it's just a dumb reason to like hate something. But it happens to me all the time. I'll get into it a little bit later probably, but I mean, I just think I have these preconceived notions about something, and I'll literally spend 30 years not checking out a band because I think I know something about them.
Yeah.
Well, it's really sad.
Yeah. But okay, so we're moving on.
What's your choice?
My first choice. This is, I'm gonna kind of like prerequisite. That's not the word that I'm looking for.
Preface,
prerequisite.
They're really close.
They are.
At least 5 letters.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, I always say preface all the time. So it's like, it's one of those words that I didn't learn until I was like, I don't know, 39, and I'm now 40. And I say it all the time. So you just
use it all the time?
Yeah, I use it all the time. Like, because it, I don't know, makes me think I'm smart or something, you know?
That's why I say communicative probably 5 times a week. I just think it's a beautiful word.
That
makes me sound real smart.
Communicative. Yeah, and you know, I've learned a lot of new words in the past year, it seems like. It's funny. Okay, so I'm going to preface this by saying that old school 80s hardcore punk doesn't appeal to me now in the same way that it used to. I mean, when I was like 17 years old, I needed to hear like the first or the Minor Threat complete discography, you know? Like, I needed to hear that. I needed to hear like, you know, like Black Flag's first 4 years, you know what I mean? Like, those were, you know, important records to me at that time. Since then, the only reason why I go back and I listen to hardcore punk is basically for nostalgia, you know what I mean? Like, even those important bands, you know, like Minor Threat and Black Flag, I still hold them in high regard because they were such an inspiration to me at that time. Mm-hmm. So very rarely do I listen to a hardcore punk band hardcore punk band or album record. In this case, it's a split that, you know, affects me in kind of that same way at the age of like 39 in the year 2020. Mm-hmm. You know, it's very rare. Like, I'm not gonna like react that much to like Gorilla Biscuits or something today. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I would have when I was 16, you know? Mm-hmm. This is one of those rare exceptions, and I can't put my finger on why it is. The first time I heard about this was on another music documentary called Salad Days about the Washington, D.C. hardcore music scene, which is named after I believe it's the final track that Minor Threat ever really released officially. But it is the Faith Void split. Are you you familiar with this at all, Eric?
Only from your list.
Okay. So
Yep.
I decided to put this up into my top 3 because this was originally going to be an honorable mention. Then I realized how insanely good I thought this split was. And I can't really quite put my finger on it other than this seems to be one of the earliest, to me anyway, one of the earliest examples of metal and punk hardcore like thrash crossovers. Like, gotcha. Yeah. But it's still done in a very early 80s way. So we're not quite yet to like, I don't know, DRI or Discharge yet, you know, or something like that. Or even like something like as, I don't know, just crazy like Venom or something. You know what I mean? Like where it's still very much a DC hardcore record. But really quickly, I just kind of want to talk about the two bands because technically this is 2 releases in one.
Right.
Each side is 12 songs apiece, and most of the songs are a minute and a half or less. But The Faith, which was actually fronted by Ian MacKay's younger brother, Alex MacKay, or Mackay, it's either Alex or Alec, it's just straight up like in your face hardcore. It's really angry, obviously, and very youthful. But the other side, the Void side, is what I think really got me. That's the one that really got me because the guitar work on this, I mean, the first like 30 seconds of the first track, which is my favorite track on the split, is called Who Are You? Sounds like something King Buzzo would play, like, you know, 5 years later or whatever on like Bullhead or something, you know, on like a Melvins record. It just starts off sounding very psychedelic and very like just weird, and clearly they had like a metal, and like I think that Void were that band in the hardcore scene that was listening to like Black Sabbath, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that the Void side in particular, to me, sounds very just deranged and weird. The last track called Explode, he does like another, like they do like another weird intro for like 40 seconds where he actually, it's just like 40 seconds of a guitar effect sounding like a bomb getting ready to go off, like, you know.
Yeah.
And then it just explodes, like literally, like the song explodes.
Yeah.
It's like the song is a literal bomb, you know. There was just a lot of, I feel like the guitar playing on the Void side was very experimental, and I think that they were doing a lot of things that other hardcore bands were not doing at that time, that I think opened the doors for like My War from Black Flag and all those other bands, you know. That's kind of what I feel, you know. And so on the Faith side, the one song that I really liked was I mean really with the Faith, I mean all the songs pretty much sound the same, you know what I mean, like and same with Void, I mean that's just hardcore punk, you know, but the lyrics seem to be really cool to me on the song You're Exed, which sounds kind of typical for that era of like Discord hardcore punk because of the whole straight edge thing that came out of it. And it almost sounds like maybe Ian's younger brother was following in Ian's footsteps, you know, or something. But the song isn't about straight edge, or at least that's not the way I'm interpreting it. I'm interpreting it as it's more about just getting somebody who's toxic out of your life in like 1983, you know? Okay, and then on the on the Void side, I'm going to say that the opening track, Who Are You, just for that intro alone, blows my mind. The guitar playing, I mean, the first, like, when the band actually starts playing after that intro, it sounds like Sunshine of Your Love, or it sounds like a it sounds like Blue Cheer or something,
for sure.
There's this huge, like, classic rock influence on the guitar playing. And then also, I also really like the song Organized Sports. I could be wrong about this, but if I remember right, Void were kind of like the black sheep in the DC hardcore scene, that they actually kind of came from, like, they came from a different area that I think was a little more upper class. I could be completely wrong about this. So, but I think that they actually were actually, like, into sports. And so, like, that song, I think, was kind of actually about, like, them being into sports. I could be completely wrong about that. Like, so don't quote me on that. So anybody who's listening who knows anything about that, but if I think that Salad Days touched on that a little bit. They were kind of like this band that was just weird. But it might not have been Void. It might have been another band. But for some reason, I have it in my mind that it's Void. So yeah, that's my first pick is a hardcore punk. It's now considered a classic. I guess a lot of people, there's still arguments today about which side is better. Like, which is like, to me, that just sounds kind of stupid. It's like, to me, it's like, just enjoy both sides, you know?
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's something that I think you grow out of it a little bit, and maybe over your life you revisit it at certain points.
Yeah.
With varying degrees of, like, getting into it, I guess. I would say I was into a lot of hardcore when I was real young, and then again, maybe about 10 years ago. When I was playing hardcore and trying to find inspiration and stuff. And so, but yeah, when I first started this, I was like, oh, wow, this is hardcore. Like, honestly, the faith side of this thing, if someone said, can you play the most straightforward, traditional, classic 80s hardcore punk, I might show them this. That's not necessarily a good thing. Like, the reasons I wouldn't show them Black Flag is because it has too much groove or too much style.
Yes.
A different sound, or, like, I wouldn't show them a lot of things because they aren't the quintessential sound. This faith side is, like, it is just as straight of hardcore punk as I've ever heard.
Yes.
But the cool thing is, it's something that you can't fake.
Yes.
Because the reason it sounds like this is because it's happening right then. They're making it up then. Like, they're writing it then. If you hear this now and try to replicate it, unfortunately, you're going to hear everything that came in between.
Yes.
You know? And so this is like the straight dope, essentially, to me.
Yes.
And so I thought it was great and a super good example. But the Void side of it, really quite different.
Yes.
And the first thing I wrote was very warm guitar tone.
Yeah.
And that may be because the faith side is so shrill that I was almost grateful to hear a warm guitar tone.
Yes.
But it's kind of like the same thing with Fear. Like, there's a blues sound or element to the guitar work.
Yes.
That's not in other punk rock at the time, or at least that style. And so I think your idea about the classic rock influence on this totally, to me, makes sense. The drums are almost jazzy at points.
Yes.
And that, to me, is a direct response from Black Sabbath. I mean, that's the thing no one ever gets about Black Sabbath. When they're like, let's start a band like Black Sabbath, it's all just chugging on slow,
doomy
heavy riffs. And it's like, no, you're missing all that swing, dude. Like, almost every Sabbath song has a in it, you know, and it's like, I don't know, somehow the Void has that in it.
And not only
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go on. Well, I was just going to say, to your point about Black Sabbath, one thing that also I think needs to be noted that no one ever talks about for some reason is they're kind of the first band, metal band anyway, if you're going to call them a metal band. I mean, they are kind of the quintessential metal band, right?
Yeah.
They were like the first metal band that straight up used synthesizers in their music.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it only added to the otherworldliness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, side note.
Yeah. No, it's, yeah, I mean, I could talk about Sabbath all day.
Me too. They're hands down one of my favorite bands.
Me. An episode on them sometime. But yeah, I would say structurally, like the song structures, they take some really big swings. I wouldn't say they all connect. There are some misses, but at least they're taking those big swings. I think it's really experimental at points, which I guess if I have to believe that, you know, Henry Rollins was enamored with Minor Threat, then I would have to sort of believe the rest of Black Flag also knew about these bands. I don't have any proof of that.
Yes.
But I would say the guitar work definitely gets into, you know, the later Black Flag with and even what's that other group on the label? Off?
Yes, Off, yep. Yep.
Yeah, they are very experimental and kind of free form with a lot of that. And I hear little bits of that in the Void side of this split. So I don't know if there's an influence there or not, or if I'm just making a connection, but I can hear the beginnings of that kind of experimentation.
It seems like it to me. One thing that I want to note also is the Faith put out, before they broke up, they put out one more album. It was a standalone EP called Subject to Change.
Okay.
I also listened to that. Now, on that record, they added this guitar player called Michael Hampton, who was not involved in the first one. And Michael Hampton later, actually I think the following year, formed the very short-lived band Embrace, which was a band that Ian MacKaye fronted between Minor Threat and Fugazi, who are them along with Rites of Spring, with Guy Picciotto from Fugazi. Both of those bands are considered like the fathers of emo in a very weird sort of way. And when I say emo, it's not emo like, it's not like Taking Back Sunday emo, you know what I mean? It's like the, you know, like the screamo post-hardcore emo type stuff. Which, but anyway, my point is Michael Hampton added like a totally different guitar tone to the other guitar player in the Faith. And that record is a much more fully realized album from the Faith, I think, than the side A of the split. It's worlds better in my opinion, actually.
Okay, cool.
I was actually it's leaning more into like more emotional hardcore territory, kind of, than that first split. It definitely has like richer tones. Like Michael Hampton's guitar playing was definitely richer in tone than, but the other guitar player was still in the band. They just added a second guitar player, and so those two tones kind of played off of each other, and it worked really, really well. So I would recommend checking out their EP called Subject to Change. In my opinion, a much better release than side A of the Void split.
Nice. All right.
However, I think side B of the Void split was fucking fantastic.
Yeah, I thought it was too. Yeah, I'm glad you put it on there.
Yep. All right. So, your second one, Mr. Eric.
Man, that's a tough choice. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's go with Alan Vega.
Okay.
So my criteria is different than yours.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Alan Vega is one half of Suicide.
Yes.
Which is
yep.
Probably, I would say, in the second half of my existence, Suicide is probably the biggest influence, my favorite band, blah, 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 all that stuff. At least within the last decade, I have just, Suicide's my thing. It's just the best thing. I could listen to the first Suicide record every single day. And a lot of times I listen to at least one song every single day.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of it. I can't believe, again, I didn't listen to it till probably about a decade ago, and I was furious with myself for not finding it sooner. And I've still been into it for 10 years, and I'm still mad that I missed out on those other 34 years.
Yeah.
Where I didn't listen to Suicide. So, Alan Vega is one half of Suicide. So, the record's called Cubist Blues, and it was, I guess, sort of a super group of sorts. I don't know how to describe that, but Alex Chilton of Big Star is, I believe, playing guitar and probably helped to write some of the songs. Ben Vaughn, who I'm not familiar with, is a singer-songwriter. He's on it too. Basically, those three fellas are who has made up this album. It's not unlike Suicide in a lot of ways. Alan Vega's vocal performance is exactly what you'd expect. Kind of a shitty Elvis, just a lot of feedback, reverb, delay, and him, basically doing a shitty Elvis impression, which of course I love, but you gotta call it what it is. To me, the record, it just sounds kind of like broken rockabilly. Like they're trying to play rock and roll, but either they're too smart or too, I don't know what could be the problem. They just can't pull it off. Not quite. It's not quite rockabilly. So, but it is twangy. The guitar works real twangy and cool. The drums are. Hello.
Something. Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry about that. I'm gonna have to use my editing stuff here, but my dad came in and I thought there might have been something wrong, so I had to get up. Okay, so
no problem. Yeah. Hold on. I was just saying that it's sort of a broken rockabilly kind of thing that's happening. It's they're trying to create rock and roll music, and like I said, I don't know if it's because they're too smart or they have different. I don't know what's wrong with it exactly, but there's something wrong with it, and it's really good. The rhythms are a lot like Suicide, even though they're on real drums. It's very, like I said, motoric. It's just constant. And it's broken down into this skeletal sort of rock and roll thing. It's really cool, though. It's like Alan Vega not being held back by the technology of the moment, because a lot of Alan Vega's solo records are not very good, in my opinion. Like, each of them have maybe one or two songs that are cool, but then the rest of the record usually ends up being kind of a guide of what not to do with 90s synthesizers,
Yeah.
And a lot of people go through that. Gary Newman went through that. Like his late 80s through the 90s records are not good. It's not that the songs all of a sudden are bad. It's just this reliance on the new sound. It's like, well, why would we use these analog synths that go out of tune and you have to play them? Like, why don't we just program the sequencer, and sing over it? And that kind of happens with Alan Vega's solo stuff, in my opinion. This one, on the other hand, just comes off as really cool and really, I hate to use it as like a positive term, but just really druggy, Like things that make you feel cool when you listen to them. It's a hard thing to explain, but there are certain records I put on and it actually makes me feel kind of like I'm cool.
Yeah.
Like you get a little bit of a strut to you after you listen to it. And it doesn't matter if it's at the drive-in or Suicide or anything that sort of gives you a little bit of strut, I think is a good thing. And so I don't know how to explain that other than the word cool. I think it's really a cool record. Anyway, the song that I really like on it, or at least exemplifies the sound of it, is called The Werewolf. And I think it's great. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, this was a very entertaining. I think cool is the best way to describe this record. I mean, what it sounded like to me was like a room full of intellectuals that, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, getting together and making like a deconstructed blues album or something with synthesizers. And it sounded like there was a lot of just having fun, free form, maybe stream of consciousness going on. I would suspect that there was a lot of improvising going on too. I believe the research little bit of research I did when you said that this was one of the records that you discovered. I basically like it was described as like they just kind of got together in the same room and just hit record and kind of just saw what was and it sounds like it. It sounds like like just a really well done jam session between a bunch of cool cats, Right. And there's definitely like this sort of like early 90s New York art, like, sort of thing to it as well. Like, and I mean, that's that can't be avoided when you got one half of Suicide in there, I think. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Parts of it remind me of like you said, it reminds, there's parts of it that definitely do remind you of Suicide, just with guitars and drums. And then there's also, I hear a little bit of like Lou Reed going on in some of it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to mention Lou Reed under my list of music that makes me feel cool.
Yeah, exactly.
It's right there.
Yeah. It really does have that cool feeling to it. And yeah, no, it was a thoroughly enjoyable listen. It's not one that I think that I would revisit like a lot. Like it's one of those records that I think I would put on couple 3 times a year when I'm just really in the mood on like a Saturday night, you know what I mean, or something like that, to add to the coolness factor of it. But it really was like a really cool, like it was an awesome, some awesome musicianship going on there, and just great, like it just sounded like it was a fun record to make,
Yeah, I think so too. And the musicianship side of it too is something I think is important, because although Martin Rev, the other guy from Suicide, in his own way is totally a musical genius, whatever. But as far as always knowing what he's doing, I don't think that's the case. I mean, I'll just throw this out there. I didn't include it because I discovered it before this year. But Martin Rev's album, oh man, what's it called? See Me Rollin'?
Oh, yeah.
Or See Me Riding'. It came out in 95. it is outrageously cool. Like, it's really? So strange. It's like Buddy Holly, I don't even know on what drugs. Just like a Casio keyboard. Like, there's a song on there that he literally goes through all the presets on the keyboard. But it's really cool. Anyway, the Cubist Blues, though, to me was like everything that Alan Vega brought to Suicide with this really good musicianship behind it. Yeah. And that's nice to hear.
And I would 100% agree with you on the Werewolf. That actually that was the track that stuck in my mind for sure. Nice. For sure.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of really, really great stuff. All right, so my next pick is it's something that completely flew under my radar. And I just think it's such an interesting release. And to be honest with you, it's another one of those releases that I thought, well, I think that this is something that is completely new to me this year. And I just found this to be one of the most interesting things I've ever heard, and that is One Speed Bike. Mm-hmm. It's a self-titled record. When I first put it on, because as you know, I acquired a copy of it from your late friend Sean and mm-hmm. my late friend Sean Jones. It was immediately like, it just caught my eye. It just looked interesting. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what to expect. This is actually I think the only release like that is on this list, new and old, that I actually listened to a physical copy of. Right. So I heard this on vinyl first. Then I re-listened to it on Spotify. So One Speed Bike I don't think is, because I don't think he's still doing it. At least this seems to be the only release. It's got a very juvenile album title, Droopy Butt Be Gone.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous title.
It's a very ridiculous title, which I'm sure is the point.
Yeah.
One Speed Bike is okay, and I'm gonna admit I'm reading this because there seems to be very little information about One Speed Bike. This seems to be kind of a little artifact that was here yesterday and has been gone, since it came out in 2000. Basically, like it seems to be kind of forgotten about, or at least not spoken about. But it is the DJ and mobile sound system alter ego of Aidan Gert, who was the drummer for both Exhaust, who I've never heard of, and Godspeed You Black Emperor. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't know this when I listened to it. I was just like, who the hell is this? Then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, holy shit, it's the drummer from Godspeed You Black Emperor, which Godspeed You Black Emperor put out a couple of really gorgeous releases. I mean, everything they put out is pretty gorgeous, but I can't pronounce it, but the EP they did, I think it's called that's not what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Slow Riot for New Canada, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. And then Lift Your Tiny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven or something like that. Mm-hmm. Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is totally not. It's totally not two things. Number one, it's there's like nothing that is even close to Godspeed You Black Emperor on this at all. It's straight up like just BPM, straight up beats, electronic. He actually, I guess, started out the project by remixing tracks from his band Exhaust on a 12-bit Akai sampler. And then he just decided to put this entire, it says in the bio, with full 16-bit resolution. So, I mean, clearly he was using 2000 era equipment here, you know? It has moments that remind me of something like, you know, Atari Teenage Riot, but there's also, it's kind of like almost like culture jamming on record is how I would describe this. It's got, there's a lot of samples, a lot of really interesting, you know, he's experimenting with a lot of like references musically to like techno and hip hop and glitch music and just, you know, scratch samples and all kinds of like really interesting things. And it's one of those records too where I don't even know like where the songs begin or where they end. Like,
for sure,
it just sounds like one big long song to me. So it's hard for me to really pick a favorite song here other than to just say that the whole thing is just great. If you're into, if what I described to you sounds interesting, then this is for you. What I will say is that there's some hilarious, in addition to Droopy Butt Be Gone, there is a few hilarious song titles. I'm actually looking at the track listing right now. And there are a couple of hilarious song titles, like Just Another Jive-Assed White Colonial Theft, Yuppie Restaurant Goers Beware, because this song is for the dishwasher. Why Are All the Dogs Dying of Cancer? That's a little dark. And then the last track before the outro is called Any Movement That Forgets About Class is a Bowel Movement.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, dude, like I feel like a lot of the things that are being expressed on this are still very relevant today. You know what I mean? In terms of like what he's talking about, what he's, I don't know. I'm sure that probably in his mind he was just making a fun, you know, like glitchy sort of electronic record and just having fun with the sampler. But to me, it's like I just hear a lot of like, and just with Godspeed You Black Emperor, period, like, you know, because they were very political. They total activists, you know. Do you remember when Godspeed You Black Emperor actually got, I think they got like indicted or something, or they got pulled over when they were on tour somewhere because somebody spotted like something painted on their van and thought that they were like maybe terrorists or like anarchists or something. Do you remember that?
No, but it sounds about right.
Yeah, it was. I mean, this was a long time ago. This was like, I think during the Bush era, you know, when this happened. But anyway, yeah, it's just a really interesting record. I hear a lot of like, I don't know. I hear a lot of like when Men's Recovery Project, if you're familiar with them, I hear a lot of like when they kind of do the weird electronic sampley, glitchy type stuff. I hear like, you know, just a lot of like techno, and I even hear like maybe almost like a precursor to like some dubstep and things like that on here. It's just it was a really interesting project that I think was just kind of a one-off. You know, I would be cool if he did more with it. But I'm suspecting it was probably just a project that he just did, and that's that, and that's cool with me too. But you know, I had never heard of this. I didn't know what it was. It just right away the cover just caught me. I was just like, this looks really cool. This is either, the cover looks like it's either going to be the worst punk band I've ever heard, or the best or worst metal band I've ever heard. Like, right. You know, it's like, I don't know. But that's what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be hardcore punk. But yeah, really interesting electronic music for those of you who are into that kind of thing.
Yeah, I really liked this. So yeah, this one came from our friend Sean. His record collection, I kind of distributed out to all of his friends after he passed, and so yeah, Dan picked this one, and I honestly think everyone else must have had the same thought of it that you did, because no one else said, "Oh, I want that one," you know.
Yeah.
Even though I know for a fact that Sean bought this because of the connection to Godspeed and the fact that it was on Constellation Records.
Yes, I would suspect that.
But I had never heard it either before that, and so I listened to it before I sent it off to you. And it my take on it. This is going to sound so stupid. Was this is just like Godspeed You Black Emperor in every way except for the music. Like the construction of the songs, even the way the songs are titled, the political nature of it, the seemingly political nature of everything.
Yeah.
All of it's very much like Godspeed, but the music's nothing like that. It's very drum centric. It's very drum oriented. You can tell this was made by a drummer.
Yes.
And that's really cool, because what you get, I think, is just him experimenting with rhythm and experimenting with beats, and how can I make beats? What can I use to make those beats? What can I combine to make those beats? And you sort of feel like you're just hearing that experimentation happening live, almost, because of that, there's moments that seem kind of silly or whatever, but a lot of it seems really cool. And I think it's a little odd to have something so drum oriented. And it's really nice to hear something that's so confidently like, I'm a drummer, and this is what it sounds like when a drummer makes a record.
Right.
And I thought that was awesome. So it's a really cool record. I know that one came out on Constellation. I don't know if they have other stuff out that, didn't get a release like that. It seems like at that time period, Godspeed, like anything associated with Godspeed, got something released on Constellation.
Yes.
Like, you could be the guy that re-hairs their violin bows, and you would have got a Constellation.
Yeah, most likely
record contract. So, but yeah, I don't know if he has other stuff out or not, but this is the only one I've heard. I liked it a lot. I think that again, it's not something I'd put on all the time. It's just a little too intangible for me. I can't quite grasp what's happening.
Right.
But it's overt enough that it's like it doesn't require me to like sift through it.
Right.
It like I'm just automatically know that I don't understand what's happening, and that's kind of the end of the exploration.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it, and it's especially if you like all the things, all the different descriptions that we've used. If you like that stuff,
yes,
you're gonna love it. So
yep. It's a great little artifact from Constellation Records.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll go. Oh, I don't know which one to talk the most about. All right, let's go with Amnesia Scanner.
Oh man,
I love Amnesia Scanner. They have a new record out this year. It did not get on my top 3 list because I didn't like it as much as the older stuff, and that's just the way it is. The album that really blows my mind is called Another Life.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are from Germany. They have unpronounceable names. No, I'm just kidding. That's rude. No, it's Ville Haimala and Marty Kalayala. See, that's not hard. Those aren't weird names. They officially call what they do, I think, or maybe they don't call it that, but other people do, deconstructed club music. I guess that's a real genre, and I can sort of see that. It's experimental electronic music as far as I'm concerned. It is clubby, but it's also kind of hardcore techno at times, like Gabber or whatever, like just that, just crazy rhythms and stuff. But the whole thing falls apart almost the entire time. Like if you can get 20 seconds of something that you can grab onto out of this, you're lucky. And that doesn't mean that it jumps all over the place and it's dissonant, and noisy, and whatever word you want to use for something that you can't really get into. I don't think it's like that at all. But they just don't let you have any like peace, if that makes any sense, with the music. Like you're not going to relax and understand what's happening pretty much the entire time.
Yeah.
Really heavy synths, vocoder all over the place. The vocals are really what does it for me. I don't even understand. Like there's pitch shifting and there's effects and there's vocoding for no reason. Like it just happens. Like the vocals will jump, they'll glitch, they'll skip, and it's oftentimes really ethereal and pretty though. So it's noisy, but I still think it's listenable. I think it's really enjoyable and calm in its own way, even though I just said it's nothing like that. Like, and I think that's the whole thing, is it defies sort of description, but in a sense, all the elements, all the parts, and you know what it's supposed to sound like. They're just taking it apart and feeding it back to you. So yeah, the song on that record I really like. All of their songs start with the letters AS. I don't know why. I mean, it's Amnesia Scanner, I'm sure, but maybe it's something that if you search it, you can find them easier or something. But the song is AS and then AWOL, AWOL. And I can't say enough about it. I would say if you like Black Moth, Super Rainbow, or Tobacco, like you might find elements of that. If you like, kind of that drippy, young, lean kind of weird stuff too, you'll probably like the music here. I don't know. It's a hard one to explain, but the second I heard it, I was like, oh shit, I've never heard anything like this. And that's a big deal at my age.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, you hit it right on the head with everything you just said about Amnesia. This was a thoroughly mind-blowing sonic experience. I loved it. It kind of reminded me in a different way because Fire Tools is doing something completely different, but it had that same, to me, it had that same level of controlled insanity, I guess, where it's something that, like the way you said it, you can say that this is just an insane release, but at the end of the day, it's also very listenable and something that wouldn't sound too out of place if, say, like in a club. There's a couple songs where you could hear this being played in the background at a club, and it wouldn't make everybody stop and be like, "What the hell is this shit?" You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be like that. I heard, and this is probably a level of ignorance because I'm not even that familiar with Aphex Twin, but to me it sounded like what I've heard of Aphex Twin at times.
Sure. Yep.
Because it had, like you said, that sort of drippy, very dark sound to it. But then at the same time, it was strangely, like, I don't want to say poppy, but like almost catchy musically at times.
Sure. Right.
It was very, and it was, the other reason why I bring up Fire Tools is it was almost like it was its own genre. Like there's like no way you can compare either of those artists to anybody else. You know,
right. You can only talk about the elements of what they do, not
like
some total of the
like
parts.
you can say that Fire Tools is like has elements of black metal. You could say that this has elements of like, 80s synth pop. You know what I mean? Or whatever, but that's not the only that's far from the only element that you're going to hear.
Right.
I definitely have a suspicion that this was also a big influence on a lot of industrial bands. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. What year did
this is pretty new. So
okay, I was gonna. I guess I was.
Another Life actually came out in 2018.
Oh, so, okay. Well, that's a lot newer than I thought it was. Right. For some reason, I was thinking this was like a 90s thing or something.
No. Okay. It's pretty new, and like I said, they have a new one out this year too, and it's awesome. Don't get me wrong. And I think they had one in between Another Life and the new one. But I just didn't connect with them quite as much.
Yeah,
this one definitely just blew me away.
Fantastic listen. Absolutely, man. Yeah, I loved it.
Cool.
It was
nice.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is my last one. Okay, so I really was kind of debating on going back and forth between, like I said, one of them that was on the list, but then I decided to go with this one instead, which is this is all three of the ones that I decided to put as my top three were all in my honorable mentions anyway.
Okay.
But I just decided to bump them up.
Gotcha.
So this is a band that it almost should be against the law that I would like something like this. And I only say that because I normally don't like this kind of thing that much. But there's something about this band in particular that just really, it really caught me at the right time. And I really don't know why. And it's just odd that I would discover something like this at 39 years old. And this is not a very old band at all. It's very short-lived. I think they formed in like 2010 or something. And then they broke up, I think, in 2018. So I think literally, and they were all very, very young. It's this band called Modern Baseball. And the record that I'm going to talk about the most is their second album called You're Gonna Miss It All. But I also want to make a note that their debut album is called Sports. And that for some reason is kind of considered their classic masterpiece by a lot of people, it seems. But Modern Baseball is like all of the things that I like about like 90s indie rock, like and I'm just trying to think of the most general terms to describe them. 2000s like Midwest emo, jangly pop. Like when I listen to this record, this is how I would describe this band. You remember that show, The Adventures of Pete and Pete? Did you ever watch that at all when you were?
Yeah, for sure.
So the way I would describe, the intro song, that band that did that song, Hey Sandy? Polaris, yes. So I would describe this band as like if Polaris, if that song, Hey Sandy, most of the time, if the tempo was down like 30 or 40 beats per minute, it's like got that really jangly sort of like 90s sound, but then it's also a very clearly emo thing as well. And I guess the thing that really makes me appreciate it is the fact that the singer's voice, it it's like one of those situations where the voice is so odd in the style of music that they're playing, and they actually have another singer whose voice actually, like, it's the type of voice that you would expect to hear in this style of music. You know what I mean? But they choose to have the regular singer. They choose to have him sing the parts instead, and the other guy, who probably is like a better singer if you're talking technically, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Be the backup vocals, and it works so well. He's got this really like high pitched kind of like it almost reminds me of the singer from the Violent Femmes was singing for an emo band or something. Like, and when I say emo, I mean like this totally reminds me of like almost like something like The Promise Ring or something like that. I don't know how familiar you are with like sort of those bands, or like
not much.
Another band that I really am into is like Built to Spill and like early Modest Mouse and things like that. I hear elements of that in this as well, but ultimately they're just like totally this one thing, like, and it seems like they kind of left behind somewhat of a mark in that sort of world, you know, like it's totally, the songs are basically love songs for the most part, but there's something that's really like funny and sad, and I would say like completely honest. Like, they're not afraid to be a little absurd and a little quirky with like the lyrics. So like there's a little bit of like something like Daniel Johnston in there as well. Like the way that they seem to choose writing the lyrics reminds me of something like don't let the sun go down on your grievances or something like that, you know. But then like the next like minute, you know, that's a Daniel. Are you familiar with Daniel Johnston at all?
Yeah, not hugely.
Okay,
I know some of his stuff. Yeah.
Okay, well that was I didn't know if you knew that was a Daniel Johnston song.
Okay.
Don't let your sun go down in your grievances. But then like he also did a song like Space Ghost or something, or not Space Ghost, excuse me, Casper. Yeah. Modern Baseball has that same level of like just like there's like one song where like he's singing about being like basically like dumped by a girl or like stood up by a girl or something, or like I don't know what the situation specifically, but the way I interpreted it was like he's trying to get a hold of a girl, or he's just, I don't know, something, you know, like that kind of thing, right? Which is something that I'm just not really always into when it comes to music. But then like he sings about like how he's got to take his medication with chocolate pudding. Like, which is like, I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but it's also like it sounds like that was really something that was going on in his life at that time. So he was just like, well, I'm just going to put this little bit in here that right now I got to take like a medication, you know, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just silly that I have to eat chocolate pudding with it or something. You know what I mean? And I could be completely missing the point, but I don't care because that's the way I interpret it. And the music is so catchy, and it caught me off guard. I think the way I discovered it was it showed up in my YouTube algorithms, a video of theirs.
Okay.
And I was like, Modern Baseball. Okay, well, the name honestly kind of it made me sort of like skeptical of clicking on it. You know what I mean? Modern Baseball, you know, it sounds like that band American Football that a lot of people are kind of, you know. So I just kind of figured, but then like I just decided, what the hell? And then the song is called Your Graduation, and it's off of this album, You're Gonna Miss It All, their second record. And it's my favorite song on the record. And I think that these records are, I think Modern Baseball was, because they're broken up now, I guess. But they were just a really interesting footnote in that world of like teenage, like, I guess millennial, because I think they all were like, honestly, I think their first album, Sports, came out, I think they were like 18 or 19 years old, you know? So they're all like in their 20s. They're all very, very young. But the music to me sounds very sophisticated for that age, I guess you could say.
Gotcha.
And I just really, really like I like their take on the genre. It just, I don't know, it makes me happy, even though I think a lot of the lyrics are sad. You know?
Gotcha.
It's very rare for a band to be classified as an emo band to make me smile. Because usually that's completely contrary to the point, you know? And so...
Right.
That and I only say they make me smile because the music just sounds really jangly a lot of times. It sounds really cool. It puts me in that mind. It puts me in. There's also, I hear, like, you know, Beatles, like sort of like almost like a Beatles thing going on in some of their music. So yeah, Modern Baseball.
Cool.
I really I just stopped and realized that this record, because I was listening to it a lot over the summer. And so I was like, this album really did like affect me even more than like the first Jawbreaker or the Dead Milkmen one. I actually just listened to like a month ago. So,
gotcha.
I just kind of was like, I think Modern Baseball qualifies a little more, you know?
Cool. Yeah, I've heard a lot about them from a lot of people, most notably Chuck Moore, our friend.
Yes, Chuck. I like how you were just I
think he tells me
friend. He listens to
all
this.
The time.
He listens to this podcast, by the way. So,
I'll
let him know that.
Well, maybe friend is a strong word.
Did you hear that, Chuck?
Acquaintance.
Did you hear that, Chuck?
Negative acquaintance.
You are our negative acquaintance, Chuck. Now I'm not gonna tell him that he got a shout out in a shout out. A shout out.
No, I'm just kidding. He's one of my best friends of all time.
No, absolutely. Chuck's a great guy.
He tells me often to listen to Modern Baseball, and I never have yet. Still,
he actually ended up kind of being one of the reasons why I clicked on that YouTube video, because
nice.
He's into a lot of stuff that is that style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
which usually isn't my style, to be quite honest.
No, mine either. Mine either.
The two of you suggesting it, I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, so. I would definitely recommend You're Gonna Miss It All. That's my favorite record. But Sports is also really excellent. Their last album, they put out 3 albums. Their last one was called Holy Ghost, and that one was good too. But I really think those first 2 records, and when you do get around, if you do get around to listening to it, and when you do, I want to have a conversation with you about it, because I'm curious if you heard like everything that I described.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
cool. Nice.
Now on to the honorable mentions.
Yeah. Did you use up all your honorable mentions, or do you have more?
Oh, I have more.
Oh, okay.
I have more.
Do you want to go, or do you want me to take one and you take one?
Why don't we just go ahead and list off all the honorable mentions at once?
Okay, go for it.
You want me to go first with the honorable mentions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sure. I'm gonna also I'm gonna kind of do the same thing that I did last time, where, there's so much more than just 3, but I am gonna go ahead and Eriks, the album. Now, Eriks is because I guess they did a reunion album recently, a hip-hop duo from the 90s of these rappers called Latif the Truth Speaker and Lyrics Born. So they combined their rap names together, Eriks, Lyrics Born and Latif. And DJ Shadow produced a few tracks on there, and it's considered, and I'd never heard of it until now, because I think I was reading an article about, 30 best underground hip-hop albums of all time or something, or indie hip-hop albums, and Eriks was like at the top. But this is considered a like sort of a breakthrough record. It came out in 96, I think it was, and the production on it is insane. It definitely sounds like it's ahead of its time. It's got a very experimental nature to it. But the thing that blows my mind is the first track, which is called Eriks. They actually rapped simultaneously at the same time 2 different verses.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
it was very much like the song "The Gift" by the Velvet Underground.
Yes, exactly. It was just freaking unbelievable, and
yeah, really cool.
A lot of really, the whole album, I could see why it's considered a hip hop classic. I never heard of it. Like, I was just like, this is one of those situations like, where it's like, why? Like, I'm mad at my friends, even though my friends have never heard of it either. But that's no excuse. I still hold them accountable.
Somebody should have told you.
Somebody should have told me, even if you didn't know what the fuck it is. Yeah. You should have let me know. Yeah. No, they're like, I'm coming for them all. Like, as soon as this quarantine stuff is. It's on now, dude. It's on. No, but it's really, really cool. Really cool record. Okay, so then the next one that I'm going to mention, because I already talked a little bit. I talked about Jawbreaker and Dead Milkmen, both really great records. But the other one I'm going to mention is this group called Lost Sounds, and it's called Rat Brains and Microchips. Are you familiar with them at all, Eric?
Just when you had it on your list.
Okay.
But I liked it. Yeah, it's funny. I made some notes about this when I was listening to it. I wrote, it's very punky. It's very old school, kind of an X-Ray Specs feel to it, but also very dissonant. And then I wrote, production-wise, somewhere between Atari Teenage Riot and Jay Retard.
Yes, absolutely.
And then later, I looked it up, and
he was in the band.
Produced by him.
He was in the band.
I loved it. I'm so glad you wrote this on there. The organs, the goofy ass synthesizers.
Yes.
It's groovy in its own way at times. It's heavy, and it was awesome. But it still has that griminess and pop sensibility that Jay Retard has.
Absolutely.
And I loved it. I thought it was really cool. So
Jay Retard kind of seemed like a somewhat of a controversial figure. Like, I know he passed away. Like,
a few years ago.
But it seemed like he seemed to kind of thrive off of being edgy or something. I don't know. Like
I think that's part of it. But so he had a band called The Retards.
Right.
And I think his moniker in that was Jay Retard. So
that's where that came from.
That's why he uses that name. I don't think he's afraid of offending people by any means, but I don't know if it's his point. Like, honestly, the record Blood Visions by Jay Retard it's outrageously good.
It's
one of my favorite records. I mean, honestly, in my top probably 25 records of all time.
Yeah,
and that's not me just exaggerating like usual. Like, for real, I could listen to it. Some of the songs are so gorgeous. My Family, other songs on there, Nightmares, just, they almost make you cry. They're beautiful. Fading All Away, that song destroys Earth.
Absolutely.
And it's awesome to hear that sort of sensibility and production in something that isn't going for that. It's very much trying to be kind of like glitchy punk rock.
It's I actually have that record on vinyl, Blood Visions. And it's so good. Okay, what do you have, Eric, for honorable mentions?
I'll kind of try to blow through these. One thing I discovered this year, and I've heard the name a lot, and I've actually heard the music, but it wasn't for me. I don't know how to say it. I didn't get it. But Arthur Russell, he is originally from Oskaloosa, Iowa. Moved to New York. Also lived in San Francisco, I think. He dated Allen Ginsberg. He's a cellist who's played with Philip Glass, David Byrne, all kinds of people. Way too famous to have been from Iowa, to be quite honest.
Right.
Don't know why no one else really talks about Arthur Russell. We all talk about Slipknot all the time, and it's like, oh, well.
Sure.
Anyway, so the record is called World of Echo. It came out in 1986. And I'm as blown away by this record as I was by Silver Apples, maybe even more so. I can't even understand how someone made this record. It seriously sounds like he recorded every note individually with his cello. So basically it's plucked cello and bowed cello with vocals, effects on all of that. And then it's like chopped up and sliced. His voice is really beyond tender. It's like Nick Drake, but even more fragile, if you can imagine that. Like there is guitar and some electronic drum sounds and organ throughout, but it's so sparse and strange that I honestly have never heard anything like it.
Wow.
And I can't say enough about it. If you listen to World of Echo by Arthur Russell, you will probably understand music less, but want to understand it more. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the song I really like on that one's called Luck Cloud. I can't say enough about that. Then there's an album called Maisie Fly. It came out in 2019 by an artist called Spelling. She is from California. I don't hardly know anything about it at all. Joe from Peanut Ricky told me to check it out, and I'm glad they did. There's elements of soul, but then it breaks into some synthwave stuff. It's got really heavy prog-ish breaks, kind of like Black Mountain has these big prog breaks. There's a group from Chicago called Gone, Gaan, which I had the pleasure of seeing here in Iowa City quite a few years ago. But it was real big, heavy synth prog. And it sort of reminds me of that, but only in the breaks. The rest of the time, it's almost like an R&B record. But check it out. The song from that I like is called Real Fun. And the last one is by an artist called Father. Even though it's actually Father written in Korean, the record is called White Death. I don't know anything about the artist. I don't know where they're from. I don't think it really matters. So Father is part of a genre that popped up a few years ago, like around 2015 or whatever, and pretty much died out within that same time period. There's maybe 20 records that fit into that genre. So I think that the ideas of Death Dream as a genre have been sort of brought to the forefront by artists like The Caretaker. And things like that. It's very quiet. It's very cinematic, ominous, stark. The big thing about Death Dream is that the music ultimately consumes itself, essentially. It destroys itself. It falls apart. And all I can say is go to Bandcamp, type in Death Dream, and check out all those albums.
Sure.
This one, like I said, is called Father, but I don't think you'll find it that way. The album cover is like a skull
Yep. Nope. Actually,
kind of over the shoulder of a little girl.
I just pulled it up by typing in father.
Okay.
On
cool.
Google. Yeah. It showed up with the is it Japanese?
Korean.
Korean. Okay. Yeah. Korean. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
because I had to download that keyboard onto my phone to find new artists in this genre.
Sure. Yeah.
So I could translate it all. Yeah, it's cool. It's almost like post rock. Like there's moments leading up to a crescendo, you know, like in Godspeed or Silver Mount Zion or Mogwai or whatever. But it never really resolves. It never really hits that crescendo. It just breaks. It just falls apart. And yeah, it's I don't know. I can't really say enough about it. I would say that this death dream genre, why not give a couple records a listen?
Sure.
Father, all of their releases is really cool. The last song on White Death, honestly, I thought I was dying when I heard it. Like the impact of listening to the entire record and then the last song coming on, like I don't know if I've experienced chills to that extent ever.
Wow.
Like, it really, like I was terrified and I was beside myself, like almost for a second, like jumped out of my body. Like I know that's a crazy ass thing to say about music, but listen to the whole record, and when that last song comes on, you'll hear what I mean.
Okay,
it's amazing.
It's crazy. Yeah, I do have to make a confession, Eric. I still haven't gotten around to listening to any of your honorable mention picks yet.
Oh, that's fine.
So
yeah,
but I do have Spelling and Arthur Russell both on my Spotify playlist. So nice. I'm definitely going to check them out, but I haven't gotten around to them yet.
Cool.
But yeah, so that concludes part 2 of the best of 2020, the old stuff. The old stuff.
Slightly more succinct.
Slightly more succinct, exactly.
just
also comes with more editing.
Yeah, right.
Like, so,
oh man, you guys are gonna not hear so much shit on
this
one.
And there's gonna be a lot of parts that don't go together, but you know.
Oh yeah.
So Dan's
just gonna remix this whole thing.
This is our attempt at glitch podcasting.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be
new podcast genre.
Yes, exactly.
Lo-fi. William Burroughs did it so long ago.
Lo-fi glitch podcasting. Any last words for the wonderful listeners of the Accelerativ Thrust world?
No, I'm stoked to have heard from a couple people.
That
listened, and so that's super exciting to me. So
that's awesome. Yes, that's one thing that I do want to say is I appreciate everybody who has taken the time to listen. Yes, I think that we got some cool stuff that's going to be happening in the future with the podcast. I'm not going to reveal yet, but one thing in particular that we talked about through text, Eric. And so that'll be kind of cool. And I think that's it for the week, man. What do you think? All right.
Yeah, all right. See you guys later.